Continuing to monitor Hurricane Francine, which sits out in the Gulf of Mexico here this morning. Those who haven't tuned in or are still kind of getting caught up for the morning bulletins, there was no update at 7 o'clock. The update that came in at 4, though, did shift that track a little bit over towards the east. And I think that we are going to continue to see that track shift a little eastwards as we go through the rest of the morning. We are kind of honing in on that Terrebonne Parish, Morgan City type area. I think that that's where it's going to ultimately come on shore. A little bit eastwards of where we were talking yesterday, and that means all those impacts that we were talking about yesterday, those are going to slide eastwards as well. Expecting it to continue to strengthen a little bit, eventually getting up to a Category 2 storm as it makes its approach, but it should top off there, and it already looks like some of that shear, some of that dry air is actually having an impact on the system. We're going to take a look at the structure of it here in just a sec. So while we do expect maybe getting up to about 100 miles an hour, I don't think this is going to be one of those runaway storms like we had with Laura, like we had with Ida, where the intensity kept ticking up and up and up and up as it made its way towards shore. I think it does probably cap off here this afternoon and will actually start to weaken a little bit as it makes its way inland. That is not going to minimize the impacts, though. Remember, that strengthening and that weakening had all played into the forecast when we were telling you what those impacts are going to be. Nothing so far has really caught us off guard or surprised us really at all. The intensification we saw last night, we were anticipating the intensification where we may see this morning. We were anticipating that as well. All of the rainfall still sitting just offshore, but you are getting those outer bands to kind of creep into the area right now. And within these, you're going to start to see those winds picking up, 30, 40 mile an hour winds associated with some of this, and the possibility for a couple of those spin up tornadoes in the mix as well. The bands will start to become a little bit more intense as we go through the rest of the morning. Right now, you're kind of getting waves of rainfall, waves of that wind, a little bit of a break. And then the next one, a little worse and a little worse, and that's how it's going to go. Did want to point out this eye showing some signs that there's that dry air getting in. Notice that there's not much on the wraparound here. Ultimately, or traditionally, you would see some real intense banding right on this part. We're not seeing that. And I think that's that dry air. That's that shear that is working against the system, which is why I think it caps out at a Category 2 storm and why we're not going to continue to see it intensify all the way up towards landfall. Now, there's some nasty stuff coming on shore already. Very heavy rainfall making its way through Morgan City. This is going to wrap around and move northwards here. So we're going to start to see some of those bands creeping their way into the Lafayette area. Rainfall going to be picking up. It is light stuff out towards the west right now and fairly light down towards the coastline. And these areas where you kind of see those reds or those deeper oranges, that's where you're probably going to get some of those spin-up tornadoes that are going to come through as well. The possibility certainly out there. So we're going to be monitoring for that as well, but they are very, very hard to see on the radar. So you just got to kind of be very vigilant and mindful as this stuff does kind of come through. Obviously, if you were in the Morgan City area, the St. Mary Parish area, you kind of want to be inside and make sure that you're kind of riding it out now. And like I said, it's going to get a little bit worse as we go through the day. Winds right now probably sitting about 30, 40 miles an hour down towards the coast. That's where we're going to see the worst of it. We got some pictures down to Sipplemore Point. Looked like tides were running about a foot above normal. Tides continuing to come up a little bit as well. So we're watching for some of that coastal flooding. I think most of the areas are all reporting minor flooding at this point in time and expecting more surge on the way as this storm continues to creep in. And so that is going to be probably the biggest concern that we end up having. We're getting some of those observations out there here early on today. We started to get some of those oil rigs reporting wind gusts about 79, 80 miles an hour. Remember, those are sitting a little bit higher up, there's a couple hundred feet up in the air, but you're likely starting to see that develop now, and that is going to continue to push its way through. You've got 33 mile an hour wind gusts down closer to the coastline. You're going to see that with some of those bands that are coming on shore as well. So 30, 40 mile an hour winds expected with some of those bands, and those are going to increase as we go through the rest of the day. We've actually got a live look at Morgan City here this morning. If we can pull that up, we've got a crew that is down there streaming that this morning. Jacob Wallace bringing us this video imagery of the bridge there out over at Morgan City. It's a bridge that goes along the Atchafalaya River, which is running fairly high as well. We've got meteorologist Jason Adams joining us from Tampa. He's come in to help us out and help cover the storm a little bit. And he's got a look at what you can expect as we go hour by hour.
Yeah, so we're still watching the structure of the storm. Very important because I know a lot of you are so concerned about that rapid intensification that we have seen with past storms here in the Gulf of Mexico affecting the Louisiana coastline, and what we've been seeing also back over to my neck of the woods back in Tampa Bay and in the Florida area. So thankfully, what we're looking at this storm system, it is currently, while it's developed enough to get it up to nearly Category 2 strength, we're not seeing any indications at this time that show that rapid intensification is happening. We're seeing high vertical wind shear. What that means is that the top of the storm is being pushed off to the right while the bottom of the storm is lagging behind it. Hurricanes like to be vertically stacked perfectly like this in order for rapid intensification to occur. Right now we have a hurricane that looks like that. So that's working in our favor to not allow this system to strengthen much more than what we're seeing right now. However, unfortunately, it is still organized enough that we're looking at a hurricane moving on shore. So hurricane warnings continue here, especially in areas where we're likely going to see those hurricane force conditions. That's for those of you in the St. Mary and Terrebonne parishes area north, up to the Baton Rouge and Slidell, New Orleans region. That's where we're likely going to see the strongest wind with this system. Now here back west, we are looking at tropical storm warnings that we're really going to see a drop off in those winds once you get to the west of Lafayette. We're not talking about significant hurricane force conditions for those of you that are east of, or west, I should say, of Lafayette. So here's how it's going to shake out hour by hour. Notice as we go from this morning to this afternoon, those spiral bands that Daniel was just telling you about that we'll have to watch for that isolated tornado potential. They'll continue to move on shore. The rain really picking up, the wind intensification also getting going as well. And if you're in those hurricane warning areas, that's where we're looking at winds over 74 miles per hour. That's the possibility as the center of circulation moves on shore. So when is that going to happen? That looks to be mainly late this afternoon. So over the next few hours, while we're going to see an increase in the intensity with rainfall and wind, we're not looking at the severe part of this hurricane moving onshore until later this afternoon into this evening. So by 4 and 5 o'clock, a potential landfall somewhere again from Terrebonne east. That's where we're looking at potentially seeing this landfall maybe somewhere near the Homa area. And as it moves to the north, it will likely bring in at least tropical storm force winds to New Orleans. They could even see some gusts occasionally up to hurricane force winds. But with this eastern track and this eastern trend we've been seeing here the last couple of days, that's really working in our favor back here to the west to only get tropical storm conditions. Now, I don't want to downplay tropical storm conditions because they could lead to sporadic power outages, some power interruptions over the next 24 hours, and also any weakened tree limbs or trees that with all the rainfall that we've been seeing as of late. The soil's a little easier for these trees to maybe take a tumble. So we still got to watch this very closely, but as we go to 10 o'clock tonight, it's now moving somewhere in and around the vicinity of New Orleans and Lake Pontchartrain, heading north into Mississippi as we go into the overnight. And the farther away that center moves from us, the better our conditions are going to be. And we're going to see significant improvements heading into the day tomorrow. So that's kind of where we're at right now, where we're heading. But I also want to talk about the good news here, and that's for your Thursday forecast. We're going to decrease the clouds from the morning to the evening. We're going to see lots and lots of sunshine later into the day. So if any cleanup is going to be needed, the weather will be participating here as we get into the day Thursday.